Federal judges ruled Thursday that Michigan's congressional and legislative maps drawn by Republicans in 2011 violate Democratic voters' constitutional rights. The state's legislature must now redraw at least 34 districts for the 2020 election. The Supreme Court is also set to decide a case this term involving partisan gerrymandering in Maryland and North Carolina. At issue is whether it's illegal to draw congressional districts based on which party is in control. The practice of gerrymandering has been going on for years. Here are some examples of gerrymandered districts. They include Texas 33, which looks like two upside-down bats, Texas 35, the upside-down elephant, North Carolina 12, a snake there, and Louisiana to a mustache. The new documentary Slay the Dragon from Participant Media follows citizens groups working to fight the practice. Here's a preview.
We have brought together some of the best minds in the legal community, and we have studied so carefully the Supreme Court's jurisprudence on this question and built an evidentiary record that is so complete that, that I'm confident we're going to win. I'm confident we're going to win. I'll tell you, the future of our democracy depends on it.
Barak, Goodman, and Durrance are directors of Slay the Dragon. Gentlemen, thanks to both of you for being with me. Congratulations on your documentary. So interesting, especially in light of today's news out of Michigan. You profiled, I think, Katie Fahey, correct?
Right.
Who was working for this. What do you make of the court's decision today? Chris, let's start with you.
Fantastic. I mean, it's a huge deal. 2020 was set to be a massive fight in Michigan, with the elections being fought on the 2010 maps, and this basically, throws that all up in the air. So a huge win for democracy in Michigan
Barak,
today.
did you see this coming when you were following Katie?
Not quite. Katie's fight was slightly different. Katie and her group, Voters Not Politicians, was trying to change the way that district lines are drawn in Michigan, basically taking the power away from the legislature and giving it to a citizens group. And they won that fight, which was super inspiring to follow and sort of comprises the heart of our documentary film.
Now, I think for a lot of Americans, the issue of gerrymandering is a little confusing. If you could break it down for us, there are two main types, correct? Packing versus cracking.
Right.
Can you explain the difference?
Yeah, well, they're very related to each other. Basically, if you're the party in power and you want to hold on to that power, you can discriminate against the voters of the opposing party by concentrating as many of them in as few districts as possible, so they'll win those districts, but only a few of them. Or spreading them out, that's cracking, to as many districts as possible, so they'll get a certain percentage, 20% of the vote, but we'll have no chance of winning those districts. So
right.
they work in lockstep, and they're both designed to dilute the power of the opposing party's voters.
And of course, both parties have been guilty of this. This is not just one party or the other. A famous example of gerrymandering happened in California after the 1980 census, when the Democrats drew 5 new districts to help them out. How has technology now changed to make this easier to do?
The technological change is huge. Basically, what it means is that politicians can identify voters with a precision that has just been impossible until now. And I think that's what made 2010, which was really when gerrymandering came into the major leagues, made 2010 possible. It's this ability to pick voters with pinpoint precision and allocate them in a way to make that packing and cracking possible.
Right. Now, another thing that you guys sort of illustrated in your documentary was the rise of the Tea Party movement when that then unknown Mark Meadows, came out of nowhere to defeat Heath Shuler. How was that factored in?
So one of our on-camera witnesses says it very well. What happened in the Tea Party movement in 2010 is that this was a very strong political movement that swept into power with the help of a lot of money and so on. And then the gerrymandered maps kept them in power. It's almost as if a seawall was built, so that usually there are waves that come in and out. The seawall, the gerrymandered districts, kept that Tea Party wave in.
Right.
And that's why so many Republican legislatures throughout the 2010s have been far to the right of the voters that put them there.
So what can the average person do? I mean, obviously you are following some people who are fighting for it, like Katie there in Michigan, but what can the average person do? They see this and they say, hey, that's not fair. Is there anything a voter can do about it?
Absolutely, and that's one of the inspiring things of the film. We make it clear, because we've seen this when we travel around the country, that you can't rely on politicians. You can't rely on politicians because they have no incentive to do anything about this. And you can't rely on the Supreme Court. It's very unlikely to be a reliable player in this. I mean,
why do you say that?
Because the court, in the two sets of hearings, there are two big cases before the court, and in the oral arguments, it's clear from the questioning and it's clear from the makeup of the court since Justice Kennedy left that it's not going to be a favorable place for doing anything about partisan gerrymandering. So that leaves us. It's basically, it's on us, and that's what we found in the film.
Well, part of the problem, it seems to me, is that there are no clear instructions on how to draw district lines, correct? I mean, there's sort of vague ideas around geographical sites, correct? Does that need to be clarified?
There are a set of criteria that are supposed to be followed fairly rigidly. The Constitution does allow for some political considerations to be applied in redistricting, and that's sort of inevitable. What the plaintiffs in these cases around the country are arguing is that there's a line over which you shouldn't be able to cross. Just because you can have some political considerations doesn't mean you should have any political consideration. So where is that line? That's the question. How does the Supreme Court say you can go up to here, but you can't go any further? That's been the problem.
And you guys say you know it when you see it. If it just doesn't pass the smell test, it's political gerrymandering. Is that right?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a fundamental tenet in American democracy. Firstly, it's one person, one vote. And secondly, that the person that wins the most votes should win.
Well, we have an electoral college, so that doesn't work in that
but
regard.
In states and in state houses and state legislatures where this is pernicious as well, that's what's happening. And so the party with fewer votes is winning more seats, and when they're losing, they're holding on to those seats. And I think that most Americans find that objectionable.
That's right. Well, you've laid out a roadmap on what people can do about it. Barak and Chris, thanks to both of you for being with us, and congratulations again on your film.
Thank you so much.